Welcome to another episode of the ASQ Podcast, where personal transformation and conscious leadership meet. Have you ever felt exhausted? Not just physically, but the kind of tired that reaches all the way into your soul? Today, we dive into what it means to continue to show up for ourselves and our lives, even when the soul feels worn thin. Stay with us as we explore the delicate balance of surrender, struggle, and the quiet strength it takes to keep us moving forward.
All right, well, welcome to another episode.
Welcome to another episode. Welcome to another episode of the ASQ Podcast.
Ah, you're so cool when you say those things like that.
How are you?
I am good.
You said I'm corny?
Cool.
Oh, cool. I was like, oh, okay.
Cool
I do feel like I look corny, but
not at all. Not at all. I mean, this is one of the things about just us being ourselves and sharing what we know and sharing to the people that want to listen. So just being ourselves when it comes to this conversation.
That's true. Being real. Being real.
So
right.
What are we up to today?
So today, actually, this is a really good episode. I'm excited about. I'm never excited to talk about stuff that I feel vulnerable talking about, but I think it's important because we're all about living from our authentic essence, right? Yep. And being open and sharing first, you know.
Yep.
To encourage other people to do the same.
Yeah.
This movement of being vulnerable, right?
Yeah.
But it's really important to me to talk about this just because I think that a lot of people go through this silently. You know what I mean? So
it's interesting though, because when I
let me say what we're talking about.
Oh, okay.
So we're actually talking about embracing authenticity and listening to our souls when we're going through struggles, deep struggles, right? Yeah. Internal struggles. Yeah. So okay, now we can go.
So primarily, it's this concept of surrendering, right? And so I got up one night as I go to my mental stuff, and it was 3:00 in the morning.
Mental stuff.
It was 3:00 in the morning, and going through, the life challenges of trying to figure things out, finding your own voice, finding your message, finding your path, right? So I woke up at 3:00 in the morning, and this idea of surrendering came about, right? It's like, because there's certain things that I'm aware of, and there's so many other things that I'm not aware of whatsoever, right? So we kind of like titter-tatter between the spiritual and the practical way, right?
Yeah.
So and to me, spirituality, it's not this idea of escapism or this idea of completely just saying whatever, let the universe decide, right? But it's a practical application, right? Because there is some times in which you do have to surrender to the situation to allow it to be, so that you could begin to creatively figure out ways around it.
Right. To unfold the opportunities or
exactly.
It's hard to say opportunities, but that's really what they are, because you don't, I think we close ourselves off to that when we're in the midst of going through struggles and pain, emotional pain and frustrations. And we don't realize that these are opportunities, you know what I mean, for growth. And so let me start with, I wanted to start with a quote. This is by Rumi. I have been a seeker and I still am, but I stopped asking the books and the stars. I started listening to the teaching of my soul. I was deep. When I read it, I was like, oh, this is important. And I guess for me personally, and I'm going to just kind of go into this whole thing, it's been a very challenging time for me over the last couple of months. There's been some, I guess not heartache, but some disenchanting moments with certain people in our lives. And it's revealed the how do you call that? Like it's revealed situations. The situations have revealed themselves to me. And it's been an eye-opening experience, right? And it's been hard to accept it. And I've also been struggling with, finding my place and my footing with what we're doing here with A Soul's Quest, and making sure that I'm showing up in a way that is genuinely who I am, being my, authentic self, and contributing in a way that's meaningful so that I can be impactful for people that I speak to, or that people, or the people that listen to me that say, oh, I can kind of resonate with this person, obviously I think we all deal with different things, whether it's financial, physical, health, parents, children, relationships and whatnot. And those are all things that sort of start to really weigh you down. And when you get into this age, I'm 52. So I'm at an age where I'm just like, and I say this to you frequently, God, I just thought that I would be in a different place at this age. Right. And, it's having this expectation that this is what my life was supposed to be like. It was supposed to go like this. I was supposed to have this and have, 2.5 kids or whatever. I did certain things. I had that, but I just expected to be in a different place right now. And that's what I was talking about when it was that unfolding of these opportunities, right?
Yep.
Because you expect life to go a certain way, and you expect it to be like this perfect cadence of, this is what's going to happen.
And steps.
Yeah.
Yep.
And when it doesn't happen, you're like, what the hell? Like, what happened? I'm finding myself feeling confused and like, in the matrix and whatnot, So it's been really challenging for me over the last couple of months, because I really, really dive deep into a different part of me, which is what we're going to go into, to explore. And I'm doing air quotes for those of you who are listening, why these things are happening to me.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know how, I do know, but for the purposes of what we're doing here, how you've been feeling the last couple of months, but it's been interesting.
It's been a challenging time, because there's a lot of kind of dissolutions, right? That happen. And it happens in a lot of aspects of my life, professionally, personally, and the challenge is to be able to align yourself with the flow of life, right?
The ebbs and flows.
The ebbs and flows, and allow yourself to be able to understand those ebbs and flows much better, right? Because at the end of the day, and I love this quote, all plans are speculative. It's from this movie, The King, because they are speculative, right? It is when things happen, right, that are outside of our control, we blame ourselves for it, right? And the reality that most of the stuff that happens in our life is completely outside of our control, We are under the illusion that we're constantly in control. Right? There are a lot of things that we can control, but only up to a certain point.
Yeah.
The one thing that we have that could be accessed more, it's that deep essence of who we are, and operate from there.
Right.
Right.
That's the constant.
Right? But it also, but in order to get to that, you have to use your cognitive mind to actually make sense of things, right? So, for instance, in my situation regarding this, I've been struggling a lot with what really is what we do, right? What is the point? What is the messaging? What is the purpose of it, right? So I have been working mentally hard and researching and reading and all this stuff, right? But then it comes to a point, just like you said, that you have to stop asking books, you have to stop asking the stars, and you have to start listening inside, right? To your desires, to your, to the voice within. You got to start listening to that and go from that point, right? But before you get to that, you got to, the point is to stop.
Right.
Right. And that's what surrendering is like. It's that idea of not giving it away, but letting go.
Right.
Right.
Not letting go of the responsibilities, but letting go of controlling
the
outcome of those
Yes.
responsibilities.
Controlling the outcome, right? To be able to get to a point in which you start really going really deep within and see it, right? So it's interesting because in the last few days, I've been listening to the Bhagavad Gita again, right? And this idea of what your role is, the part that you play, and letting go of the outcome, right?
Yeah.
And surrendering to that reality that the interconnectedness of the universe is so beyond our comprehension that we're seldom able to see how everything functions. Right. So we have to be able to understand our perception limitations when it comes to things, but also at the same time, find that place within that authentic essence and operate from there. Right. Because regardless of what happens, the objective of your life should be being that point of reference, right? And living and operating from that point of reference, right? Because the situations will change,
right?
You know?
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing. That's hard. It's hard. It's hard to do because it affects our ego.
Oh yeah, yeah. But what you're absolutely right, because I think what happens is that we go every day throughout our lives, we go through this whole process, right? And we have little hiccups here and there, and it's like, okay, no big deal. I can kind of get back on. No big deal. You know, I got this, right? And you put so much effort into trying to control the outcome of a situation.
Yes.
And then maybe it's great. Maybe it's going really perfectly fine for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. And then boom, that's what happens with like when people get divorced. Everything's great for 30 years. And then all of a sudden it's like, you know, one person in the relationship, this isn't working for me anymore. And you're just like, what?
Yeah.
And so that's not it's a good example because it's a truth. It's something that happens. But I think that what you mean by the surrender part is it's not being obsessed with the outcome and trying to put so much mental capacity into what is going to happen, and this is how it's going to happen, this is what I want to happen.
Yes.
But just allowing it to just back up, put your hands up and say, I surrender the outcome of this situation. Not what, like you were saying, not the responsibilities associated with it, but the outcome of what this is going to be.
Yeah.
What this is going to turn out the way it's going to turn out, and I'm going to accept it for what it is.
So like
that's hard to do.
It is.
So let's talk about that.
It's very hard because again, let's say for instance, children. Right? I'm going to give two examples, like a relationship situation and then like a work situation. Right. So with your kids, right? You always hear they say, well, I did everything I could. Why did it turn out this way? Right? And Sadhguru has this line, children don't come from you, they come through you, right? So your point of what you have to do, the essence of that relationship was to impart values, to impart guidance, to guide primarily so your kids are successful. And there will be a point in which that identity goes away, right? And that relationship changes, right? Surrendering, right, from that standpoint, it's realizing the inevitability of that change coming, right? Because as parents, like, we want to make sure that our kids are okay. Granted, it comes from a very beautiful place, but ultimately they're individuals, right? And they have to make their own decisions. And whether you question it or not, right, that is the objective. But we live within the illusion that because we've done X, Y, or Z, we're going to get 1, 2, 3, always, right? So so surrendering is realizing my part was doing this,
right?
And I did this to the best of my ability, right? Now, letting go of the outcome means I'll be there if they need my help,
right?
But they're no longer mine,
right? So that's the idea.
That's hard.
Well, yeah, and that's the differentiation between surrendering and giving up.
Correct.
Because a lot of people think that when you surrender, you're just saying, okay, fine, I just give up. There's a really, really big difference there.
Yes.
Because you're saying when you surrender, I'm going to be the observer of what is unfolding in this situation.
Yes. Yeah. So, and when you step yourself way back, right, like that idea of perspective.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And you surrender without trying to control A, Y, Z, and B, right? Your eyes open up. There's something that happens in you that opens up, right? So like when you manage people or when you're leading people, right? I was talking to someone yesterday about, what leadership is, and and what most people teach in leadership are like KPIs, leadership concepts like either transactional, situational, or servant leader, and all these different things, right? All these tactics as to how do you become a leader? It's about tactics, time management, and all these things, right? So I was telling them, it's like, well, from my point of view, and this is from what I've learned, it's leadership is something that is a way of life. It's something that you have to understand, like why it is that you do what you do, right? So Ken always taught us, Ken, my father figure, my mentor, about leadership is about, it's not about you.
Right.
And he makes sure that we understood that. It's not about you, right? It's about helping people maximize their talents, right? Helping people find a place to operate from ownership. Like you used to say this thing all the time: if it's to be, it's up to me.
Right.
Right. And you got to say, you got to take ownership for whatever it is. You got to take ownership. Oh, why didn't this happen? Well, no. What was your role in not making this happen? You have to take ownership instead of deviating it.
Right. Holding yourself accountable.
Right? So teaching those things for people that are in a position and a title, it's very challenging because, well, I merit this, right? Meritocracy. So the meritocracy tells them that I belong here, so I know what I'm doing, right? So people have to listen to what I'm doing. Just like parents say, the kids have to listen to me, right? And there's some truth to that, right? But what happens more often than not is that people don't do what you tell them to do. Parents get frustrated with their kids, right? Managers get frustrated with their staff. So there's all this conflict because surrendering also means operating from the point, right, that you impart, you guide, you coach, and you allow people to do things, right? When they make a mistake, you redirect, right? When they're doing something right, you praise. So there's all these different things about surrendering into situations in which the more that you step back and you do your part, your specific point of reference, right, without trying to control everything around you, right? That is the point of gaining a little bit more better perspective, more peace, right? And in avoiding burnout.
So let's talk about that with leadership for a second, because I would push back that
I like the way
a lot of people would say, yeah, it's easy to say when we're talking about like your personal life because it's not like affecting bottom line outcomes, right? And while I'm in charge of this group of people, I also have to
respond to the higher
respond to other people. I report to people who are higher up, and they're going to hold me accountable. So how do I surrender?
Yeah.
When I need to make sure that these people are actually doing what they need to do.
But that's the paradox.
Right.
Right. The paradox is, and this is what modern leadership and even parenting teaches, right? Because this is all about individuals at the end of the day. The paradox is this, right? When you operate from a place of empowering people, guiding people, right? You, some way, right? More often than none, all your KPIs, all that stuff gets, your outcomes, all those things get accomplished. That's the paradox, right? Because if you operate from this point, you will accomplish this. Mm-hmm. If you operate from a transactional point of view, the traditional way that we look at leadership, like you're going to do what I tell you to do, and if you don't do it, I'm going to write you up, right? You could also operate from there, right? And you will accomplish your KPI. So either or you will. However, from what I've experienced and what I've seen, there is more friction, right? Mm-hmm. And more effort that it takes to operate from that point of view of transactional, and you do what I'm telling you, that from the other point of view, right? Now, because you can't predict human nature, right? And this is the other part, right? Talk to two people in those two extremes positions, right? And they both will tell you that someone did them wrong. Mm-hmm. Right? That's another part of surrendering that we need to understand, because regardless of which approach you take, you will never bat 100, 1,000, I mean, mm-hmm. right? Because the unpredictability of people, right? So like when you think of surrender on the spiritual, from the spiritual standpoint, it's just like let it go, let the universe and let God decide. Right. It's not really about that. It's about understanding that your job is to do your part. Pick your approach, mm-hmm. and in either ones of the approach that you pick will never be like this.
It'll never be straight.
It will never be straight. You're going to have your challenges. Again, this is one of the challenges that I have in spirituality, because spiritual people feel that because I'm spiritual, I shouldn't be feeling anything. No. Life will continue on whether you're spiritual or not, or you believe in something or not. The idea is how do you approach life? Mm-hmm. How do you approach your interaction with your kids? Are you going to be hovering over them all the time?
Yeah, approaching like from this position of control.
Yeah, because even if you're hovering and you're caring, that's control. Yeah. Right? Mm-hmm. If you're dictatorial or you do too much for your employees, like you give them all this stuff, that's still control. Mm-hmm. The idea is to empower. At least that's what we promote. Mm-hmm. Right? So looking at this idea, right? What happens when you don't follow your approach is that you get to, in the social work field, you call it compassion fatigue, mm-hmm. right? That you just, I'm tired of this, I'll quit, right? The career span of a social worker is like what, 2 to 4 years, something like that, because you get burned out, in right? You look at the Great Resignation that happened, and all those things, and the pressure the middle management is under. Right, and it's because you want to put the outcomes and you think that you could control it all, mm-hmm. right? Look at now. There's this big trend in relationships in which parents and kids don't talk to each other, mm-hmm. right? There's a lot of factors when it comes to that, right? But when we allow things to happen, even when it's painful, when we surrender to those things and we step back far enough and know full well we follow our approach, we did the best that we could, and things didn't work out. There is no guarantee in life. There is none. Someone that tells you that you do this, there is a guarantee, run away. Yeah,
seriously.
Because it's not true. It doesn't guarantee everything.
Right. I think anybody that sometimes you get into a position, where you're so desperate. Mm-hmm. You're just, everything in your world is like just not aligning, and you're just like, can just one freaking door open for me? Like, what the hell? Mm-hmm. And somebody tells you something and it sounds so promising that you're just like, okay,
you take the chance,
and yeah, it's important to be able to take chances and whatnot, but also to be realistic about, again, the outcome, and being able to be responsible. I think I've said that a couple of times now, because I think when a lot of people think like there's a difference between giving up and surrendering. Yep. There's a huge difference. Mm-hmm. Surrendering is allowing yourself to again be the observer of the situation. Mm-hmm. But still being responsible and holding yourself accountable for the things that happen, being practical about decision making.
Yes.
If you're in a relationship with somebody, communicating, having an enhanced form of communication, checking in with that person. And I think those are things that help, because then you have a support system. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be a relationship. It could be, relationship with friends or, parents or, colleagues. It could be a lot of things, but there's a difference when we're talking about surrendering and giving up. And I think sometimes people get confused by that.
And giving up is just saying, this is not worth it.
Right. Fuck it.
Fuck it. Right. And again, it's
and in some cases, you do have to walk away from something.
Well, that's not really walking. I'll give you an example of giving up. Right. I work with a group of young people that are, I think they're beautiful young people, but they have really adverse situations. Right. And they put the facade of toughness and the facade of all these different things. Right. And because they don't feel that anybody listens or nobody cares, right? So when you operate from that point of despair, that's giving up, because now you're living from an illusionary point of view, right? And there's a lot of people that have that quiet giving up inside, right? Yeah. So surrendering means temporarily suspending expectations, to step back. Right? To allow things to unfold. This is why we promote approaches, right? Figuring out your approach to life, to leadership, to parenting, to your crises, because it's the approach. It's understanding, right, that life is not a straight line. That there will be ups, that there will be downs. There will be moments that you put a lot of effort into it and nothing materializes. Yeah. Right. And there are points in which you put very little effort in and things materialize. Right. Yeah. So it's really looking at your life, understanding the essence of what you are, how you contribute to the world, the things that are aligned with you, whatever values those are. When you operate from there, with the understanding, the cyclical nature of life, the cyclical nature of being a parent, understanding that in anything that you do, there are moments of death and moments of rebirth, right? The old ways go out the window, and you have to quest to find new ways to approach a situation that was so. The point of surrendering is, again, going back, looking at things, looking with the right discrimination, right? With the right perspective, to figure out how do I move forward and still live based on who I am.
Right.
See, that's the challenge, because again, what that requires is a suspension of our ego, thinking that we know everything.
Right.
And thinking that what we told, you work hard, it has been proven that work hard and you get everything. That doesn't work always like that. There's effort.
Right.
There's effort and there's things that you have to do. But there's people that work a lot harder than I do and that we do.
I wanted to talk about that, because you're right where I want to kind of segue into this, is that differentiating discrimination of surrendering and giving up and whatnot, right? So when we're talking about that, and just help me kind of get this out, because I'm trying to explain it and I think you'll know what I'm talking about. So all of us have this inner being, right? And whether we choose to believe it or not, it speaks to us, the little voices in our heads and whatnot, and if we're able to have discernment, there is something within us that says, you got to keep going.
Yes.
Step back. If you're able to kind of quiet that noise that's going on around us, right? The distractions. And for me, so I'm going to just talk about it from my own perspective. There have been moments where I've been like, I'm done. I give up. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm just done. I don't want to do this. I'm tired. I am tired in my spirit. I'm tired in my physical, my mental well-being. I just can't. But when I step back and I take moments to pause, which I've done more frequently lately because it's something that kind of works for me, there's also that voice inside of me that says, I know you said all this stuff, but come on, Jesse, you can't give up, right? You're not going to give up. You can't. You got to keep going. You have so much, and I know it sounds all like poetic, like this little voice is my cheerleader and telling me that I got to move forward and whatever. And that's not how I mean it. How I mean it is that there's this connectedness when you live from your authentic essence, right? When you're living from that place, when you're trying to tap into that inner knowing, right? That will let you know. And that's the moment that you have to figure out whether you're going to surrender or give up.
Yep.
And so I'm glad that we started with the identifying, surrendering, and giving up, because they're very different things. They're completely different concepts, but also understanding that taking a moment to just figure out, okay, am I giving up or am I surrendering? What am I going to do here?
Yeah.
It comes from that place within.
So,
at least for me.
Yeah, you mentioned a lot of great things, right? There's a movement right now on self-care, right? And taking the time to do that. I'm always hesitant on all these big phrases and trends and all that stuff, right? Because I feel like there's things that after a certain point they become self-indulgent, right? There are times in life, and I can't tell you when it's going to be that, I've learned that myself, in which I have to just stop. Like I have to stop, right? And no amount of meditation, no amount of anything, I just have to stop.
Agreed.
And not feel guilty about just stopping.
Right.
Right. There's moments, it's like I talk a lot. I talk a lot just because I talk a lot. But also, I have to talk because I work with people, right? But there are times in which I can't do it and I don't want to do it. And I used to beat myself up when I did that, right? But not every challenge requires for me to take a pause. Wait, not
every challenge requires for you to take a pause.
No, not every challenge requires it.
Okay.
Right? Because there are things, again, perspective and approach. Life is going to take you up and down. There's a lot of cyclical things and a lot of unknown moving parts, right? It's just life, right? And there are moments in which you got to take that pause so you can recalibrate.
Okay, so you are saying to take a pause. Yeah. Because you said no.
No, but hold on, let me.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm confused.
There are moments in which, right, self-care becomes self-indulgent.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
If you step back, there are moments that, yes, you got to stop, right? Because, like you said, your soul is like, I don't know what I'm doing. Right? Everything is upside down. What that means is that you have a lack of an approach, right? So when you have a lack of an approach, stopping, it's necessary.
Right.
Because you need to recalibrate and say, okay, am I aligning with my authentic essence?
Right.
Am I allowing with the way that I show up and share? If it's not aligning, you need to stop there. Right? But if there's a challenge, like, okay, I don't know exactly how to communicate with this person, or I don't know exactly what to do in this situation, right? The stopping doesn't have to be this self-indulgent, this part. It could be simply, okay, let me take a step back. What is it that person wants, and am I operating from my authentic point of view to be able to show up to this person at this moment in time?
Right.
It's a temporary challenge that doesn't require I'm going to completely separate. You know what I mean? That's kind of like the differentiation between doing those type of things. Because again, what that requires is our ability to reason properly, to be able to discriminate correctly, to look at a situation, right? And understanding this is who I am. This is my essence, right? this is what I want, and this is how I contribute. In this situation, which I'm operating from here, let me think about what I could do. Now you apply reason. Let me, in this situation, discriminate, meaning, what is this person's intention? What are their intentions? What is the intention of a teenager fighting with their parents? What is their intention? It's a simple thing. They want more freedom and independence, right? And parents, we want control, right? So at that moment, when you understand who you are, you will be able to say, oh, okay, let's talk about this, right? Same thing at work. And at work is even simpler, because if a person is at your work, because not everybody belongs in the place, you know, it just simply means that they just don't belong there. It doesn't mean that we have to go in all this thing, oh, I hate this person, I dislike this person, and this and that and the other, and again, creating friction. Right? So surrendering, again, going back to surrendering, it's about gaining perspective and knowing that you're operating from that essence of who you are, right? And accepting the fact that life is cyclical, that you can't always control situations nor people, that your job is to operate from there and let go of the outcome. Right? That's scary. Right? But my essence, right, is to empower people. And it has cost me a lot. Because number one, people don't, as much as they say, people don't want to empower others. Why? Because we're looking about self-preservation, care about what we're going to do. We care about our status in society. Anybody that tells you otherwise is full of shit. Because we care about status. We want to eat first. We want to be the one. There's nobody that is fully altruistic out there. No one. Right? So when you look at that, you have to really look at yourself and say, if my job is to empower people, right, I have to be okay with the possibility of them failing.
Yeah.
Right? I have to be okay with the possibility of them making a mistake. And I have to be okay, right, with the realization that as a person, I could do two things. I could condemn that person or guide them. So that I, as a leader, as a parent, ultimately get the ultimate objective of whatever it is that you want to accomplish. From a parent, is that your child is successful in life and ready to face the real world, right? From a business, that this person is contributing to the overall mission of our organization, right? And my job is to get to that point, to get that person to that point in which they're leaders. Again, this is hard.
Well, and it's also not something that people are, when it comes to leadership, that's not what we're thinking about. And even when it comes to being a parent, that's not what we're thinking about. And that goes back to talking about perspective and like, what is the outcome that you would like to see happen? Not control, but like to see happen. Right. And how can I contribute to the betterment of this individual? Right.
Yeah.
Because, and that's a hard stance to take, or a position to be in, because again, not everybody is altruistic. There isn't one person out there that is completely, that's their that's just what it is. You're just
very few.
Very few.
And again, it's like, it's not, again, because I know how I talk, and I know how I am, and I know how I express myself, and it sounds complicated, and I get it. I understand the way that I express myself could be convoluted and like, oh, wait, I can't connect the dots, right? It's right. I mean, I know because I know who I am, right? But the idea is this, right? Go out to your family, right? Go out to your place of work. Look at society. And what are the symptoms that you're seeing out there, right? People are unhappy at work. Families, the core of a family is no longer important, right? we're fighting against each other about different ideologies, right? Because being a conservative or a liberal or this and that and the other, these are all ideologies, right? They're not fixed points of views. I mean, fixed aspects of life, right? But we're fighting over that. People are separated. People living in angst, right? People are not feeling secure. They're not. So if we traditionally have followed a certain approach and get the same results, wouldn't it behoove us to actually look and maybe change our own approach on how we go about life?
I think that happens sometimes when you've just come to a place where you're hitting a wall. You know what I mean?
Unfortunately, I was talking to a friend of mine about this. Unfortunately, right, transformations, and I don't know why it's designed this way, but the universe either lets you choose to transform on your own, which very seldom happens, or it's going to make you.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. Well, that's how I opened up this whole episode, is that, you get to a point where you're just like, oh my God, I don't know what is going on.
Yep.
And you can either make the choice to surrender or be resistant against that.
Yeah,
and I think when you're resistant against Mother Nature, is going to teach you a lesson. Yeah. So, and
Mother
I think
Nature
that
will always win.
if people can resign to that fact, and accept that fact. Yeah. Accept that fact that, there's only a certain amount of things that I can control, because there is a definite thing that you can control. There is definitely, for those of you who are wondering if you can control and you want to stay in control, you can.
Yep.
You can stay in control of yourself and how you respond to that situation.
Yeah. And
that's hard to do in a lot of aspects, is to understand that, I can't control anybody else but myself, my reaction to this behavior, or this, my response to this person and whatnot, because a lot of that, sometimes it's like, I'm not going to get run over. I'm not going to let people push me around and blah, blah, blah. But people are going to be people. People are going to people, right? And so it's hard to sort of accept.
And I take it a step further. It's really about, and this is one of the things that I struggle when I wake up at 3:00 in the morning. It's like, okay, what am I talking about? What are we talking about? And the idea is about approach. I just finished reading this book by Seth Godin. This is strategy, right? And there's a big difference between strategy and tactics, right? And strategy really is an approach on how you do something. Like if it's in a business, what is your strategy? What is your philosophy for your business? Who is it for, right? The tactics are just things that you do, right, to accomplish that strategy, that philosophy, that approach, right? The tactics change, time and place, skill level, knowledge, new techniques, technology changes, right? So your approach, your tactics will change based on the environmental things that happen. Your approach is the constant, right? That's operating from your authentic essence, right? And since we as individuals are a way for the universe to know itself, each one of us has a certain essence, a way that we are and a way that we contribute. And that's what the quest is about. It's about finding that, creating that approach for yourself. Mine is completely different than yours. And we talked about that, right? Like we are different, but we understand that and we accept that. But we had to surrender for that, right? Because for many years, it was like, I don't understand what this dude is doing. I don't understand why can't she see what I see? Right? So what did it bring? Conflict, right? And a lot of that times we weren't operating from our own essence, right? Like you just said, I'm still, after all this time, I'm still trying to uncover what that is, right? So, but the more we start looking and the more we go into our quest and the more we start reflecting properly about our experiences, because a lot of our conclusions we draw from our experiences, but we only have a singular perspective of what we see, right? And that requires us stepping back. That it requires us surrendering to realities of the universe and how everything operates, right? In order for us to do that, to reflect properly, to create our own philosophy, approach, strategy for how we are going to live the rest of our lives, right? It requires pause. It requires those type of things.
Right. So let's get into, because we can't talk forever, but we can, but
I can't, because it's about Friday. I'm done.
So a couple of things, just sort of practical things that have really helped me in terms of identifying that, and understanding the idea of surrendering and finding that space of calm in the storm, right, has been really, again, taking that step back, stopping, pausing, and sort of really taking in mentally what is happening in my immediate surroundings, right? And a lot of the things, and some of these things work for people and some of them don't. For me, meditating is not something that I have incorporated into my life. And I think a lot of times, and we've discussed this in the past, that people think meditating has to be this big drawn out, let me put on this robe and, clean myself and sage my body and do all this crazy stuff. And it's really not that serious. Yeah. You can go there if you want to, but you don't have to. Yeah. That really, it's just, again, for me, it was just stopping, or it is stopping, taking a pause, taking in some deep breaths, saying a few words, to bring myself. It's just about centering myself, right? And what I do in those moments is I allow myself to sort of process what's happening. Take a step to see the forest for the what is this? See the forest for the trees, right? Is that how it is?
Something like that.
Something like that, yeah. And be able to just be an observer of the situation rather the person that's involved in the situation, right? And that's really helped me to find my focus and help me to center myself and also connect with my inner being and that inner knowing and allowing that to process my situation for me and then living from that authentic essence, right? Yeah. And it's a daily practice. It's something that I go through consistently, moment to moment. In the morning, I could be great. And in the afternoon, I could be like, what in the hell happened? Yesterday, I woke up feeling a little bit anxious. And I kept repeating mantras to make me feel better, to calm my spirit, to make me feel like, okay, everything's going to be all right. One moment at a time, the deep breaths, letting it go, deep breaths. And then, of course, the journaling. Yes. That has really helped because I can say whatever I want in my journal. And I know that it's sort of a deposit, a safety deposit box is what I call it. Yeah. Because it's mine and I could put whatever I want to put in it and I just let it go and I move on from there. And so I don't know what helps you, but I wanted to be able to leave our listeners and our viewers with something that they can take that is practical and doesn't take a lot of effort and really works. Yeah. If we can just take that pause to implement these little daily
things. Yeah. So yesterday I was running a group last night, right? And one of the guys said, man, you're so wise. I said, no, I'm not. I just read a lot of shit. I just read a lot of shit and I write it down. And if I find something interesting, I kind of like explore it and go down that rabbit hole, so to speak, right? And one of the things that I've always done, and that for my whole life, is always I just journal, right, quote unquote. Yeah. But for me, it's just about getting rid of the gunk, gunk out, right? Because there's a lot of like emotions and feelings and things like that I don't have a place to put it, so I put it on paper. Yeah. Right. And I just put it on there. And so one of the tools that always helps me is when I'm going through a situation which it's not making sense, I just start writing about it. F this, F that, boom, 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 just let it all out. Because what that does is, for me, is that it almost kind of like clears the tube, right? And gets rid of all the, like putting Drano and the pipes.
You went right where I was thinking. Yeah, that's hilarious.
Put Drano on the pipes. So that helps me get rid of all the noise, right? So that I could come back to like, okay, what is it that you want?
Yeah, processing things. Things become more clear.
Right? Exactly, yeah. Meditation for me And again, it's not about, because a lot of people teach it about quieting your mind, right? It's about observing your mind, right? So for me, my form of meditation is what I just explained, is giving those feelings and thoughts an outlet, right? So that I could get past all that and get to a point in which I am, okay, then ask the question, right? And I wrote it down over here, right? The question is, who or what am I still trying to prove to myself? What am I trying to prove to myself? Or who am I trying to prove something to, right? Because those are important questions for us to answer. It goes back to our status. Is our status defined by what other people think of us and the perception of that? A lot of people say, no, I don't care about what anybody else thinks of me. And I'm like, okay.
Right.
Oh, okay, sure. Right? Because human beings, we search status, right? And in our path and what we do, and this is one of the things that I'm, again, waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning is being clear about the message, because, again, I recognize and I know that we are not for everybody. We are not. We're not meant to be, right? That's a part of truly surrendering and understanding that my job and your job and what we do is to express what we are. And so people find value in that, great. But I'm not enforcing anything on anybody, right? There's no coercion in spirituality is one of the things that I've heard a while back, right? And there's no coercion in the things that you do. I'm explaining it and I'm sharing it. Hopefully it's value. But through journaling, through letting all that stuff out, I recognize that one of my biggest drivers is freedom, right? But freedom, it's not really all about comfort. Right? Most people think that freedom is about doing whatever it is that you want to do, when you want to do it, how you want to do it, without any repercussions. They just want to, that's just an animal. And animals are free. They do and they just go by their impulses. Right? So that's what an animal does. But freedom is not about, for me, it's not about just being comfortable. It's about learning. It's about evolving. It's about doing my best to align with all the cycles of life. Right? To be able to go with that flow, right? To be able to live from the point of view of wanting to empower people, right? So I may not be as status-wise, like some people might have their own status, right? Or whatever, but it's my life, for the most part, I like it, right? So if you could get to that point and feel comfortable with who you are, and understanding that your freedom, it's about living from that essence, then I think you're okay. But it starts with a tactic, right? Get all that out on paper. For me, that's what works, and I always promote that because I think it helps. And that's another form of meditation, because, again, the goal of meditation is not to stop your brain from functioning.
Right.
It's not going to happen, right? It's to be able to be the observer. And you could observe it by just looking at it visually, or you could observe it by just writing down all the stuff that he's saying.
Right.
Either or.
So I think one of the things that people struggle with, and we're gonna close with this, is that they struggle with, what am I gonna write? They sit down and they have this blank piece of paper and they're like, what am I gonna write? What am I gonna write? So I thought it would be really great to just share with our listeners and our viewers that a couple of prompts to get people motivated. I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there, and the world that people offer, they sell these things. We're going to give it to you for free, to help people start that process. And I think it would be great for us to share, so we'll put a couple of prompts and questions that you can sort of reflect on to help guide your journaling process. In the description of the episode. When we put it out,
and I'm still trying to figure out how to do files and share it with people, but I'll figure that out eventually. But we will put a couple of prompts, right, into
that really do help guide that thought process.
Yeah, and again, the goal of what we're doing eventually, with the launching of the book in August and all that stuff, it's really to get you to a point to start thinking about that essence of who you are, right? Yep. and operating your own way from there, not my way,
Right.
not your way, but your own individual way.
Yep.
Right. And that's those are the type of things that we'll do. But yes, that will be posted in the description. And then when you could just take the time to surrender for a few moments.
Just a few minutes.
Right.
That's all.
Listen to everything that's coming up. Acknowledge it, recognize it, and see what you could discover about yourself.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's all it is.
Yep.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the ASQ podcast. Remember, embracing your authentic essence is the first step toward a life filled with purpose and leadership. Join the movement. Live authentically. Lead with purpose. Until the next time, keep reflecting and keep growing.